I'm so grateful to NJP for inviting me to be part of the Jubilee celebration tonight. Um, it's such a significant time, I think, for us to gather and think about the themes of NJP's work. I know we're all deeply troubled by the kind of levels of crisis that we see people facing in our communities, and by kind of the level of housing insecurity that we can see on the streets. More and more people living without shelter and facing so many dangers, including the criminalization of poverty, and the crises people are facing living under a for-profit healthcare system, which of course has always been a crisis, but has been felt like such a more significant crisis with a global pandemic happening. The ongoing crises faced by the white supremacist systems of policing and criminalization and enforcement, immigration enforcement that we're seeing, and then of course climate crisis and all of the consistent disasters that is causing in so many communities. I know many of us have been aware of both fires and hurricanes just in recent days. And so, for me, reflecting on JP's work, I'm reflecting on it in the context of those really emergent needs. And I'm also reflecting on it in the context of the ways in which we've seen, I think, in the past 18 months, especially, an immense blooming of resistance to these conditions. Of course, I'm thinking about the uprisings sparked by the murders of George Floyd and Breonna Taylor in 2020, and how many people have been in the streets and causing disruption that cannot be ignored, and forcing politicians and institutions and ordinary people to face the reality that we have to stop the criminal system and immigration systems, which of course have been expanding our entire lives, and that we actually need to defund them and get rid of them. And that it's outrageous for basic human needs like housing and childcare and healthcare to go unmet while that system endlessly expands and causes so much harm in our communities, and particularly in Black, Indigenous communities and other communities of color. And during the last 18 months, we've also seen the brutal realities of the federal government's failed response to the disasters the pandemic has caused. And we've seen people during that just working relentlessly to help each other. We've seen people doing food projects to make sure people have what they need who are out of work. We've seen people contributing to bail funds at rates that we've never seen before, people supporting each other to have housing, people defending the encampments where unhoused people are living against police raids, which of course all of our cities and counties are engaging in, even though it's so unethical. We've seen people raising money for those left out of the stimulus checks and the unemployment benefits that have come during the pandemic. So to me, it's like so moving to see the outpouring of mutual support in the face of crisis, and to understand that that's the way through. I think the last 18 months have, for me, really underscored two big lessons. The first is that we need large-scale organizing and disruption, as well as sustained collective work to make change. The necessity of tearing down the systems that are extractive, that are destroying our environment, that are caging our communities. Like, we need major disruptive organizing to put a stop to those systems and to force their dismantling. And the second lesson that I think we've learned many times before is that the government is not going to show up for disasters. Like, that it doesn't come when it's needed, or it brings guns instead of support. And that especially for people who are stigmatized and who are on the bottom, disaster relief doesn't show up. And that actually we need millions of ordinary people to do disaster relief to save each other's lives. And beating back state violence and building up our well-being are the essential jobs of this time that we live in, this very pivotal, very scary time that is actually full of potential for immense transformation. NJP's work to me is clear. Like, its role in this broader ecosystem of change is so clear in this moment. It is so obvious that NJP's work is essential at this time. I think we all know that law is not and has never been on the side of poor people. That, in my opinion, is by design. And that the systems that we live under need to extract, they need to discipline and stigmatize and manage the people at the bottom, in ways that end their lives early. And it's, I can't tell you how strongly I believe in the idea that everyone who is being devoured by those systems, people who are facing housing court, welfare hearings, criminal proceedings, family court, all of those people deserve the dignity of accompaniment, deserve the opportunity to not go through that alone and face the worst isolation, stigmatization, trauma of those systems when we go through them alone. And NJP is one of the few resources for people to get that accompaniment and that advocacy when everything is really stacked against those people. And I want to make a note, myself as somebody who was a poverty lawyer and who trains law students to be poverty lawyers, and many of my former students are brilliant geniuses who work at NJP and are doing such vital and beautiful work. I want to just name how difficult that work is, how high the levels of need are, how under-resourced this type of work is. Again, I would say by design in these systems, how many people in need can't get what they need, and also how most of us who do this work do it because we went through something similar in our lives. And so there's a really intense aspect of the secondary trauma that occurs when people are doing this work. And NJP is one of those organizations that takes the hard cases, that isn't willing to just turn people away because their case is complicated. So the work is particularly hard. And I just, so often I hear people in community talking about how NJP lawyers were willing to take on something so complex in which it would be easy to say this person, like, they're just going to lose, or that it's too complicated, we'll take someone else's case. And so the true like valor of NJP attorneys in doing that like really moves me. And the other thing about it is my students and friends who worked at NJP have talked to me a lot about how NJP is a place that actually takes care of their employees who are doing that work. I've had students who've gone through emotional breakdowns from doing the like really intense work of supporting people in domestic violence proceedings and other family court proceedings, who just had periods of burnout from what it is like to be a frontlines warrior in a system that is killing people. And to me, it's just like very profound to see NJP actually like care for those workers. So I just also want to name that that's something I really admire about the organization and I feel is related to its broader values. So yeah, I'm really delighted to be part of celebrating NJP tonight. And it's been really beautiful to get a chance to reflect on NJP's role in this movement ecosystem and this moment in which accompaniment and resistance are so, so important. And I just want to encourage you, as other speakers have, to contribute to keeping NJP going and keeping NJP serving as many people as possible as we face what want to just be honest and sober to say are the continuing unfolding disasters of the time we live in. We're going to be continuing to deal with, especially the impacts of climate change and the way it affects every other system. It affects the housing system, it affects people's health, it affects people's access to food. It affects all of these things that are already in states of crisis and pushing so many people to not have what they need. And we really need organizations like NJP to survive and thrive during these times because there's more people in need than ever. And it's a vital time for us to be doing the deep movement work to build the world that we can actually live in and survive. And NJP has a very important role in that. So I'm really grateful to be part of this celebration. And I hope you will consider doing what you can to help support NJP and recruit others to do the same.